in some areas of the country we've had a bit more snow than others. I appreciate you all turning up. This meeting will not be broadcast live, however, a recording will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members attending via Microsoft Teams refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphones muted when you're not talking. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, welcome and apologies. Geraint, do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. You've got apologies from Nigel Ray, yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Geraint, can you ask the members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare, please?
No problem, thank you, Chair. If I can start with Councillor Ashley, please.
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne?
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Jones?
None.
Thank you. Mr Kelleher?
None.
Thank you. Yourself, Chair?
Only to mention that my husband is a recipient of a pension, and I see that pension funds are loosely mentioned in some of the accounts.
Okay, thank you. Mr Rees?
No interests that I'm aware of, Joe.
Thank you. And lastly, yourself, Councillor Williams?
Just say that I'm a member of the Pensions Committee.
Okay, just remind everybody to use the mics, otherwise people on Teams won't hear us. All right.
Just to highlight that I'm a member of the Pensions Committee as well.
Thank you.
I apologise. I also receive a pension from Torvine.
Chair, can I come back and say that I also receive a pension from Torvine as well? That's the bit I'm not aware of. Bit come in there.
Is that everybody now? Did anybody need to come back in? I think that's it, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry I prompted you all. Right, agenda item 3, minutes of the Governance and Audit Committee from 19th of October. Unfortunately, I didn't attend this meeting, so I'm relying on those who did to say whether there was anything untoward within the minutes or anything to raise. As there's nothing to raise, I'll take them as agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the action sheet. Please can you state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the action sheet? If not, we can accept its contents. The only item on the action sheet is the training that was raised during the meeting. So we don't as yet have a date for the training. Is that?
No, I sort that out and get a training date in due course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Agenda item 5 is the audit of accounts. So I'm going to hand it over to Audit Wales colleagues. I think it's Julie Rees. Is it?
Good morning, Chair.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Is the sound okay?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Julie.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Item 5 is our audit of the accounts report. And for the purposes of those who are new to the committee, it's a report we present every year in this format. It summarises our findings from our annual audit of the Council's accounts, specifically this year 21-22 Statement of Accounts, which will be coming onto your agenda next. The report covers the timetable we followed this year, the draft audit opinion we intend to issue once we receive the letter of representation, and it also draws significant issues to your attention as those charged with governance, which includes any uncorrected, corrected misstatements and any other issues that we think necessary to report to you before you consider the accounts on the agenda next. I appreciate you'll all have had the opportunity to read the report, so I won't go through line by line, but just wanted to pick up on a couple of things this year, if that's okay. The key message to give is that we intend to issue an unqualified opinion, and that opinion is set out in Appendix 1 for your consideration. In terms of the timetable this year, the audit deadline was amended this year for all local governments in Wales to the 31st of January 2003. The reason being that I've mentioned at a previous meeting, but we have had a couple of key issues that have arisen on non-current assets, specifically the property, plant and equipment, and they're impacting all councils in Wales. These issues have taken some time to resolve, and I'll come on to the specifics of those two issues when discussing the findings shortly. So on page 6 of the report, this sets out the issues that we're required to report to yourself before you consider the accounts. The first that I'll pick up on are the uncorrected misstatements. These are any errors we identify that are above our trivial limit that we request management to correct. And if they choose not to correct them, we report those to you, and as well as asking management to set out their reasons for not correcting those in the letter of representation, which they've done, and we've seen the draft wording around that. So the first uncorrected, the only corrected, misstatement is in para 12, and it relates to the classification of expenditure. Management have elected not to correct this, but do so intend to correct it in next year's accounts. The error isn't material and doesn't affect the opinion at all, but we're just reporting it to you today. In terms of corrected misstatements then, these are set out in detail in Appendix 3. Again, I won't go through them line by line, but I just wanted to pick up on 4 points really this year. The first one was just a point to clarify for yourselves. One of the amendments, the 792,000, which was relating to the classification of a school, that correction hasn't actually been actioned in the accounts that you've got in the pack, but I've discussed it with management, and that will be corrected for the version that proceeds to sign in. It's just a minor classification in note 13.1 that just needs to be corrected. So apologise, that missed the final version that you've got today. The 3 points I wanted to pick up in terms of issues that we've had then. The 13, there's on page 15 at the bottom of your report, there on that page, we've got a £13 million correction. And this was to remove assets that were held at nil book value, but which no longer existed. So that was the correction to amend that, and we're satisfied that the residual population was correct. So in terms of the coming on to then the two issues that we've contributed to the delay in the progress of the audit. At the top of page 16 there, we've got a £45 million correction. Back in the audit plan, we had a significant risk alongside other local governments in Wales relating to asset valuations and the risk around that their current values not materially different to the net value on their balance sheet. So post the council has completed additional work this summer to ensure that their current valuations were correct, specifically applying a general building indices to recognise the inflationary pressures and then the fact and the impact that it's having on asset valuations. And the work they've done then has led to that correction to the draft accounts that we received in May. Now we've audited that and we're satisfied that the balances are materially correct. And the final issue that I wanted to pick up on related to infrastructure assets, and this is again the second national issue that arose on PPE this year. Infrastructure assets are mainly roads, bridges. They're assets that are steady state, long life assets. There was concern raised nationally in 2002 over the reliability of local government records to support how these assets have been accounted for, in particular when the assets have been de-recognised on disposal or replacement. So essentially, SIPFA and Welsh Government have provided two reliefs this year to allow local governments to amend the disclosures that they've got in their accounts, which is in note 13.1, for a specific period of time. This is going to allow local governments time to address the weaknesses around the accounting for infrastructure assets that have been identified nationally. Torfaen has elected to take advantage of these reliefs. We're satisfied with the disclosures they've made in the accounts, and we'll be working with the council along as Audit Wales with all local governments in working with them as to how to address these going forward. That was probably all I was going to say on the report. Sorry, it's quite a lot there. I'm more than happy to take questions on any areas that I haven't picked up specifically that you may want to. And just before handing back, I just wanted to put on record my thanks to the finance team in particular. It's been a very challenging year, and I appreciate the cooperation and support we continue to receive from the finance department. Chair, I'll hand back to you and happy to take any questions on any specifics.
Thank you very much, Julie. Has anybody got any questions to ask, please?
I'll just ask a question,
yes.
which is less directed, I guess, to the auditors, but probably more to the council. Obviously, you mentioned, Julie, about the relief opportunity. Is Torvine planning to make use of that relief opportunity into the next year as well, given that that relief lasts for another year or so, or is it going to start to move to a more material reporting?
We will be taking advantage of the relief, along with the vast majority of other councils in the UK. We will need to refine our records going forward to enable us to identify, and we'll also be waiting on CIPFA to come up with a little bit more detailed guidance than is currently out and about in a wider world. So that those two factors have taken us to using the freedom that we will have next year and the year after.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else got any questions, queries? Mr. Mark Rees, over to you.
Diolch, Chair. And thanks to the Audit Cymru team for everything they've done, and to our own finance team in producing this report. I just wanted to ask a question about Appendix 3, the summary of corrections made. I just wanted, if officers could give me an opinion as to those corrections. Are they significant? Are they just something that can be put down to just straightforward human error? Are they issues that are likely to come up again, or is it something that we can learn from to ensure that they aren't it isn't raised again? Thank you. Diolch.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Would you like to answer?
Yeah. Okay. So, with regard to significance, well, given the value, yes, they are significant. On the face of the note here, when you consider it within the face of the balance sheet of the accounts, they are less significant, although still sizable values. With regards whether they are, some of them are errors, and are related to activities of staff, and we are taking actions to address those so that we hope that they won't come through again. But we cannot guarantee, because to err is to be human, isn't it? So we can't guarantee that they won't occur again, but we are doing things to put in actions in place to mitigate the likelihood of them occurring in the future. Some of them are, as Julie has said, are national lines of inquiry that came out after we produced our accounts. We produced our accounts early. We submitted them to Audit Wales in the middle of May. So those changes would have happened anyway. They are not human errors. They are changes that have arisen as a result of a new advice and guidance from governing bodies and regulators. So it's a bit of a yes and a no, Mark. But with regards what the issues that are within realm of our control, we are doing everything we can to make sure that they don't occur again. But as I said, err is human, but that's not an excuse. But we are doing everything we can so that they won't be appearing again. Hopefully, fingers crossed, legs crossed, and everything else crossed.
Thank you for that response.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? Mr. Callaghan.
Thanks. It's on that issue in a way, Chair. I've, in the course of professional life, I've met many organisations who have uncovered human error and tried to establish a suite of lessons learned coming from that and how to mitigate those. But often those errors are still repeated because there isn't a conversation with the risk management register on the repetition or the potential repetition of those errors. Have you considered any of those human errors, which as you quite rightly say, do occur in every organisation? Have you considered about whether they actually represent some risks to the council at all in any way, and whether they should be flagged up as a part of the risk management process? Sorry.
So, no, we haven't. You know, if you look at previous ISO 260 reports, you'll see that the majority of our ISO 260 reports are very, very clean, with very, very few amendments. So this year is an exceptional year for us. What we are doing is we are undertaking additional training for the staff who are involved in the fixed assets, because that is where all the errors are. And we have a meeting scheduled for the 1st of February with our software supplier for our asset register. And we're going to work with them to understand the system more, and how we can use the system to produce the information from start to finish, rather than exporting it into Excel spreadsheets and then using spreadsheets to produce the notes. So we're looking to use the system as entirely to remove an element of human intervention and interpretation. So no, in short, we haven't considered the risk register, and I don't think it's appropriate really for it to go onto the risk register.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. Obviously, lessons are being learnt and things are moving on. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. Right, I see no more raised hands, no more queries or questions. So, item 5 is for noting only, so can we note that item and move on to agenda item 6, which is the statement of accounts. So please can you present your statement of accounts for us? Thank you. Thank you for that. I did have a few questions, but I think over the discussion of the last two agenda items, my questions have been answered. So has anybody else got any questions?
We haven't heard anything, Chair.
Apologies. I didn't turn the mic on.
Sorry about that. I didn't know.
Sorry, Gary.
Right.
You're completely dead.
We'll go through that one again then.
Oh, I'll have to remember what I said now. Yeah, so...
it's obviously good stuff.
Yeah. So, item 6 on the agenda is to present to Audit Committee as those charged with governance the statement of accounts that has been completed after the conclusion of the audit process. So Julie has just talked you through the findings of the report of the audit process. They have been incorporated, all by that 792,000 in 13.1 into the document that you'll find at Appendix 1 to the report. Also attached within the suite of reports and attachments is Appendix 2. There's the letter of representation, which will be one of the documents that will need to be signed after consideration by Council next week. And also attached to Appendix 3 is the responses to questions raised by or standards questions raised by Audit Wales to those charged with governance, both of a management and a Audit Committee sense in relation to the fraud and governance and arrangements for 21-22. So I won't run through the report any further than that or the statement, but I'm willing to take questions thereon.
As I said, most of my questions that I did have answered by listening to the last two agenda items. But I did have some questions on, if I may, before I ask everybody else. Page 125, where we've provided answers, responses to the questions, I did notice that 2021 and 2021-22 are identical, as if they've been copied and pasted. I assume that they have been checked and not just...
Oh, definitely. Yes.
That's okay. Just my own reassurance. Thank you. No. Has anybody else got any questions with regard? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, it's. I was just noting on page 46 that there seemed to be a significant increase in reserves and provisions. There's mention made of noting the increased reserves within schools and looking to try and use some of those balances. I just wondered if there was any underlying comment on that. Is that down to complete prudence or opportunity?
Would you like to answer?
Both. I've got to get the years right now. In 21-22, there were underspends on general operations of the council's revenue budget and school budgets, but also the council, like all public bodies, were supported through the exit of the pandemic. So that there was a significant amount of money provided by Welsh Government to local authorities right across Wales to assist with delivery of services. Some of that money allowed the freeing up of base budget, which gave us a position where we could invest, or we could put money into our savings, our reserves, which is what we've done, and that has put us in good stead when we are considering the 23-24 budget now. We're really considering its scrutiny week after next week.
Thank you for that. Has anybody else got any questions? Councillor Williams.
Sorry, I just got to find it now because it is a rather long report. It was really, I think it's page 115, which I need to find, which was about the outstanding creditors. You obviously noted it's a normal part of offence that to have outstanding creditors, so it's really just to understand what's been taken ahead to address this and whether this is normal, given that as a new member of the committee I haven't really got a baseline to consider it against. Is that clear? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the
It is page 115 of the report.
Right, so we're talking within the related party transactions area, not within the wider. This could vary every year. It depends on the relationships of members with organisations who provide services. So dependent on the returns that we get from members will depend on how the construct of this report. It's never very large, you know, when you consider, you know, we're talking hundreds of millions of pounds. You know, they're very small, but they are, they have, even though they are small, they you know, because a member has an ability or is receiving resource from the council, it has to be declared within this note as a related party. But you know, they're not large amounts, but it doesn't tend to. It could vary year on year, depending on the individual members within sitting and their returns and their situations.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Stuart Ashley, you have a question?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for that. The business about reserves again, and you did mention next week's budget meeting. I did pick up on that. Normally we don't have much in the way of reserves. That's a moot conversation we often have, certainly where the public are concerned. What is happening with these reserves? Obviously, because you did allude to the fact that there'd be something we're picking up in budget conversation. I'm just intrigued here.
So,
have I made sense there?
Yeah, yes, Councillor Ashley, that does. Yeah. So
you've whetted my appetite.
Yeah. So the level of reserves, our reserves are still small. We don't have a significant value of reserves.
Yeah.
You know, you see there that we, you know, 9.7 million going into reserves.
Yeah.
It seems a high value to a layperson, a non-finance professional, but they are quite small when you consider that, you know, we're a £300 million revenue turnover organisation with hundreds of millions of assets as well to maintain and develop. So we do still, our reserve balances are still small, and they are just that, as I said, our savings to be used in the main for a one-off resources. With regards how they're going to be used, they will continue to be used to support initiatives to develop services. So the papers will be coming out for scrutiny next week, which outline what is going to be used. There is an element of usage for 23-24. It's quite minor usage in 22-23. But what we are proposing for 23-24 is considered appropriate use of reserves and doesn't diminish the reserves too much.
Thank you there. Thank you there. I'm comforted by what you say there, because you do allude to that every time we have this discussion, and I do take the point.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? I've just got one more thing to say on page 145, is just to say thank you. The staff dealing with the day-to-day treasury management and capital expenditure are all qualified in accounting and very professional, and I appreciate that, because as a person who only manages my household budget, these millions and millions blow my mind. So I do appreciate that everybody who puts these reports together and everybody who does the day-to-day running is... Oh, am I jumped onto the next agenda? Oh, sorry. Good turn in the council. Okay. Right, moving back to the item that we are on, item 6. If there are no more questions or answers, The recommendations are on page 36. Please can you all state that you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise, I'll take them all as agreed. Everybody's agreed. I see lots of thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you all. Moving on to the next item agenda is 7, which is capital strategy for 2023-24 and 27-28. Sharon Dixon, over to you, please. Please can you present the report?
I'll put my mic on. I'm not presenting this twice.
Lesson learned there, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to present the Capital Strategy Report out to 27-28. And this is a forward-looking report, so is created to outline our intentions with regards to the current and future capital programme and how we intend to fund it. And this includes consideration of the Treasury Management function. So in constructing the capital programme, the priorities of the county plan have been applied. The 23-24 provisional settlement from Welsh Government for supported borrowing and general capital grants has increased considerably compared to 22-23. The capital programme is summarised in Table 1 and the funding streams to support this are outlined in Table 3. Where the capital programme is not funded immediately by resources, then a notional borrowing need is created called the Capital Financing Requirement, or the CFR. Table 4 shows the CFR and subsequent year-on-year movements, and the Council is required by statute to pay off annually an element of the CFR through a charge to revenue called the Minimum Revenue Provision. And these figures are also illustrated in Table 4, and the proposed policy for the MRP calculation is included in Annex A. The Treasury Management and Capital Strategy work alongside each other. An effective Treasury Management function ensures there is sufficient cash to meet Council spending forecasts. And the two main objectives of the Treasury Management Strategy are managing borrowing and investing surplus funds, but this has to be with controlled risk. The Treasury Management function ensures that cash flow is effectively monitored and cash is available when it is required. Any surplus cash is invested appropriately and in accordance with the investment strategy outlined in Appendix A. With regards to the investments in commercial activities, we see this as high risk and introduces budget uncertainty, so investment in this area is considered inappropriate. But we currently still hold historical commercial properties, and the full list is included within Appendix C. The Treasury Management Strategy is outlined in greater detail in Appendix A, and included within this is the borrowing strategy with graphs of our current loan portfolio showing a relatively smooth loan profile, and our investment strategy and the associated investment counterparty selection criteria. We've had a change in our consultants for Treasury Management and Leasing Services, and they help provide awareness of market conditions and functionality and associated risks. I won't go through the report in any more detail than that because it's a very, very dry subject, but me and Chris love it, don't Chris? But if you have any questions, then I'm prepared to answer them, or Dave.
Thank you very much for that. I'm really glad that people like you enjoy this sort of thing. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Williams? No.
Asked the question, which was, it was really in relation to the overall capital programme, whether there'd been any, if you like, significant underspend due to sort of external circumstances that have had an impact in terms of perhaps how you've profiled the spend over the coming 4 years. So it's a general comment observation, really.
Use the mic. This financial year, yes, there has, Councillor Williams. We have seen cost increases and delays on projects. I suppose the largest project being the Mindy Primary School redevelopment, which we were hoping it was going to start, but it's it's still in the design works. At the Newing and Pontypool railway station as well, that was delayed slightly as well, and significant cost rises. But it's all to do with the external factors, the inflationary factors that is everywhere at the moment, and it's impacting right across the piece. But they're the two main ones. But we are witnessing price rises, inflationary increases, and the ability to the supply of materials and the supply of labour to deliver is impacting on capital project delivery. But we've, based on the current on-ground projects, they're based on the information that we've received from the project managers and the contractors.
May I ask a second question? Because I know you referred in your report to the non-financial investments, and I think you alluded to the fact that some of these were kind of legacy inheritance. Was that right? So my question was whether there is anything in terms of your capital strategy around potentially releasing or looking at alternative owners for some of these, transfer ownership around some of the capital assets, I guess. Maybe immaterial for this, but it's just a question of, you've got that list, so is the council seeking to retain all of these, or has it got plans to try and perhaps move some of them on, in simple terms?
At this moment in time, our commercial estate provides a significant revenue rental, which sits within our revenue account, and it's over £1 million of income. So if we were to or transfer those assets out to alternative ownership, yes, we might get a short-term capital receipts, small capital receipts on most of them. They're quite low in value, but it would require us to reprioritise our revenue budget. So at the moment, no, we're not looking to divest ourselves of any of our commercial estate. It is our, the vast majority is small industrial units around the borough. The reason why that is included as part of the capital strategy and the treasury management strategy is that a number of local authorities in the UK took a very, very commercial view of assets as a way of making money. And there were examples of councils in England who were actually buying car dealerships, shopping centres, to provide a return, and investing in other income-generating activities, which are now not providing that income strategy. So I don't know if you might have seen it just before Christmas. There was commentary about a London council who have had a debt position which is 3 times the size of their revenue budget. So that's why that's in there. But rest assured, we haven't. These are for us the legacy. They are all legacy investments which were in place, the majority of them, before I even started working for the council. So, Noah wasn't quite there, but, they've been around a long time. And they've provided a regular income for the council over that period of time without any real hiccup.
That was very helpful. Thank you very much indeed, and it's also quite reassuring. So.
Thank you for the answer. Councillor Ashley, you've got a question.
Councillor Williams always second guesses me on something I was asked a question about, which was these very the properties, because David's asked the one question which has always been asked by members about whether those properties were or weren't going. You've answered the question, thank you very much, David. But the other point about these properties, I served on Prosperous last year, and we've got a question coming up about investments in enterprises. These properties are quite important in another way because they are quite often the properties. I mean, you've got the TVA property there, for example. A lot of properties that in a borough where we don't have a lot of available property, they are the ones that generate small businesses, that sort of thing. It's not just that they might be got rid of or might be moved on. They actually are a sort of hidden subsidy in a way. I wonder if you've looked at it that way round.
Anybody like to answer?
Just think,
They're great properties.
I would say they were a hidden subsidy because the vast majority of the organisations pay a market rate rental on those properties.
But they're available, is the point I'm making. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean it that way, round. They're available in a borough where we've got quite a shortage of this type of property. Some of those properties are not available any other way, are they, commercially?
No, they're not. There are properties available, but rental must be paid to a private landlord, and some organisations prefer to deal with and correspond with a public body, so a local authority. So, they're there. But with regards to your subsidy comment, no, I don't think they are.
No, I'll withdraw that. Sorry, the point I'm making is the council having those properties has actually been very useful for the type of organisation. That's the point I'm trying to make. And traditionally, that's always been the case. And it's been the relationship between certain of our departments and those properties. It's actually been quite valuable. It might have been a nuisance in the financial terms. I don't know. No, it hasn't. Good.
No, the assets that we have on our list, like as I said, the vast majority of them have played. They've been long-term tenants in there, providing long-term rentals. Pontypool Community Council. You mentioned TVA. They were two what I can think off the top of my head. But
I was in a previous life one of your tenants as well, and it was always a good relationship. So that's why I think they're valuable.
Good.
Thank you for that answer. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So, anybody else got any questions or queries? If not, we'll move on to the recommendations that are on page 146 of the agenda. Members, please state if they're against the recommendations or wish to abstain. Otherwise, I'll take them as agreed. We're all happy. Thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 8, which is an update on external regulatory reports. Mr. Tom Roberts, please can you present the report for us?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The report is the usual report setting out details of any external audit work received by the Council. As members know, we have a protocol for dealing with external audit reports, which has been agreed by this committee. In brief, that requires all new reports to be received by the Governance and Audit Committee, where appropriate, referred to the relevant Scrutiny Committee and added to the Council's single Governance and Improvement Action Plan. This is monitored by this committee every 6 months. All reports are also received by the Council's leadership team. The report isn't for the committee to undertake a scrutiny of the recommendations, rather it's to assure itself that the recommendations being received are being properly considered and actioned. That said, if there are any questions about the specifics of each report, I will either try and answer or more likely get you the information you need outside of the meeting. As you can see, there have been 5 new reports received by the Council since the last update in October, 1 local report and 4 national. So just to very quickly sort of canter through each of those reports. The single local report was the audit risk assurance work. Audit Wales' annual audit risk assurance project is used to identify the level of audit assurance and or where further audit work may be required in future years. Audit Wales focused in particular on the Council's financial position, implications of the Local Government Elections Act Wales 2021 and the Carbon Reduction Plan. Through undertaking their ARA work, Audit Wales made 2 new recommendations for the Council focused on the carbon reduction part of their work. Therefore, the report's recommendations will be mitigated through the Council's Climate and Nature Emergency Action Plan, progress delivering the recommendations will therefore be monitored through the Cross-Cutting Resources and Business Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As far as the national reports are concerned, the first of the national reports looked at the equality impact assessment process used across public bodies in Wales. Audit Wales made 4 recommendations, one of which is a responsibility for councils to implement, and that was around reviewing public bodies' current approach for conducting equality impact assessments. The report and its recommendations sit within the portfolio of this Governance and Audit Committee. It will therefore be added to the Action Plan for Governance Improvement for future monitoring by this committee. The second national study looked at the National Fraud Initiative in Wales 2021. Audit Wales concluded that the majority of Welsh NFI participants display a strong commitment to counter fraud, with 13 of the 22 Welsh local authorities identifying 95% of the fraud and error outcomes achieved by the sector. And therefore, there was a small number of authorities who were doing less well in the NFI world. Audit Wales therefore have made 3 recommendations. The report and its recommendations sit within the portfolio of the Governance and Audit Committee. It will therefore be added to this action plan for governance and improvement for future monitoring by this committee. The third national study focused on poverty in Wales. Audit Wales' overall conclusion is that the scale of the challenge and weaknesses in current work make it difficult for Welsh and local government to deliver systemic change required to tackle and alleviate poverty. In making this conclusion, Audit Wales made 8 recommendations, 6 of which were for the local authorities in Wales to address. The report sits within the portfolio of the Council's Healthy Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The report and its findings will therefore be referred to this committee for future monitoring. Finally, we have received a national study looking at social enterprises. Audit Wales' overall conclusion is that local authorities are not effectively working with social enterprises to maximise their impact, make better use of resources and improve services for people and communities. In making this conclusion, Audit Wales made 3 recommendations. The report sits within the portfolio of the Council's Healthy Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The report and its findings will therefore be referred to this committee for future monitoring. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions, Tom, please? Right. Councillor Ashley, please.
Yeah, I was looking at the social enterprises one. I wondered whether we'd done some work on that, and I believe Cleaner and also Prosperous. I'm not making a bid for that under cross-cutting, but I've just wondered whether that's something that we've looked at in the past, because I mean, Healthy are welcome, but they seemed quite a lot loading on this one, because social enterprises have been done elsewhere in Wales and certainly in England, and the poor old Healthier seems to have got landed with this. I'm just thinking, regards social enterprises, I know what you're thinking about there is probably care, but obviously environmental is the other area that it does get. So whether that's appropriate, I mean, obviously if they think it's appropriate in Healthier, fair enough, but I'm just thinking there are a lot of examples in things like environmental and the rest. I'm just wondering whether it's something that the joint scrutiny might be better use of. I'm just wondering, Tom.
Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I think for the social enterprises and indeed for the poverty item as well, that you could make an argument for it to be a cross-cutting scrutiny committee, but I think that would probably be best discussed between the chairs of scrutiny to agree the best way forward. I'm not against the idea, far from it.
Thank you there. I wasn't touting, certainly not, but poverty is certainly one Healthier would have a go at, but it was the social enterprise one, because it's a difficult subject. I mean, thinking of some of the London boroughs that have done that one well, and Swansea, I think, is the other one. No, you're right. It needs a creative approach to that. It's just at least we've given it somewhere, and then we need to have a conversation about it.
Thank you. I think Councillor Williams, you were next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of points, really. Firstly, under the equality impact assessment at 4.3, there's reference made to examples of good practice in aspects of the EIA process across public bodies. So obviously be helpful to know if there are any local authorities in that, and if there are sort of things that we can pick up from that. I've often felt that EIAs can be a little bit laborious and overcomplicated, so anything in terms of proportionality, in terms of the decision being made, would seem to be useful and appropriate. So I don't know if that's something that you might be able to look into, Tom. I don't expect an answer now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, it's obviously not my area of responsibility, but I'll pass that on. I'm sure Kate Williams and her team, when they look at this, will be looking for those areas that have been identified as good practice, and obviously when it comes back to you, you'll be able to scrutinise whether we've taken that recommendation on board as fully as it should have been. I hope that's
that's fine. The second bit was obviously in terms of the National Fraud Initiative at 4.4. Then obviously we've had a comment from the audit report in terms of fraud measures, etc. So I think we're obviously fairly good in compliance in relation to that. So I just saw that as being quite positive and I'm assuming that we're one of the 13 of the 22 Welsh local authorities.
I'm not sure that we are.
I haven't been told we're not.
Perhaps we could clarify.
We do participate in the NFI. Audit. We perform a coordinated role in terms of getting the matches, collecting the data for it to go in, and the departments check the relevant matches and feed in. But I'm assuming within that 13 we fully participate in it. I got to be honest with you, I don't think we get a massive amount of matches out of it, which I take as a positive in terms of the levels of fraud in the system are quite low, and obviously it does tend to duplicate a bit with there is matching that goes on a quarterly basis between the housing benefit team and DWP on those matches, which the DWP investigate anyway. So, and that's always existed, and that's a significant chunk of it as well. So I think it's a positive from our point of view.
And apologies, I've got a couple of points. I think the 4-5 time for change poverty in Wales, I think that was positive to see, and I think that in different environments we've seen some of the initiatives that the local authority has taken forward. So, and my last point was on the social enterprises. I'm also conscious that that's a duty on local authorities under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and so one would expect a degree of congruence in terms of some of the work that's been done from the report and the wider council assessment, allied to what's been taken forward in social care and that responsibility. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Jones, I think your hand was next.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, just a small point of clarification. You've mentioned a number of the reports are going out to the various scrutiny committees. Will the outcome of the scrutiny committee investigations, will that come back to us in some form of a report?
So whenever a scrutiny committee reviews any recommendations that have been made by our external auditors, any recommendations that they have then made back to officers will come to this committee, will be copied into this committee as part of my 6-monthly action plan review.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rees, I think your hand was up as well. You have a question?
Yeah, diolch, Chair. And thanks, Tom, for the report and your comments. And it's obviously we have to take on board these recommendations and proposals from Audit Cymru, because they add to our positive work, but they do add to our work. And I just wondered, Tom, whether you had an opinion on whether that extra work is going to have a significant impact on the internal audit processes within the council, or is it something that can, basically be dealt with through our existing structure and resources?
Yeah, so this it's probably best to address it in two parts. I mean, the first report I mentioned is a local report, so those recommendations are particular to Torvine. So you would expect us to take them forward, come what may, and those recommendations, I suppose they're made in good faith. They're identifying areas where we think where Audit Wales think we need to improve, and we've agreed with them. So we're saying yes, those are areas that we think we need to improve as well. So I don't think there's any clash there as such. And then thinking of then the national reports, obviously they're done across Wales, and they don't just include local authorities. They also, there's recommendations in there for Welsh Government as well, which I haven't included within the report. So, I always say to officers regarding the recommendations on the national studies is first things first. Look at the recommendation and work out, does it actually apply to us in Torvine? Because it might be in an area where we feel we're actually performing really well, and the recommendations may apply more readily to other local authorities. So it's not just a case of and that this is written into the protocol around national studies. It's not just a case of blindly trying to set out a bunch of activities that we need to do to mitigate a recommendation which doesn't apply to us. So that's basically it. I think we take everything on board. We give it due consideration, and if we feel there's work needed to be done, then we get on and do it.
Thanks, Tom.
The recommendations are about delivering improvements, so
yeah,
they should be seen as a positive thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. And I'm confident that we can deal with it, and then obviously it's our job to make sure that it's done properly. Diolch, ta.
Okay, thank you all. Has anybody else got any questions or queries or comments they'd like to make? Right, if nobody's got anything else to say, can we move on to the recommendations, which are on page 174. Can you please state if you're against the recommendation or wish to abstain? Otherwise, I will accept them as agreed. Yep, we're all agreed. Thank you. Moving on to the next item agenda, which is 9, and the Council's Performance Management Frame. Over to you again, Tom Roberts, please, present the report.
Good morning again. Over the previous 12 to 18 months, significant work has been undertaken developing the way the Council approaches performance management. We've therefore started developing an overarching performance management framework for the Council. The PMF gives a high-level overview of the key components that together define the Council's approach to performance management as it stands and how it will look like going forward. And this is set out in Appendix 1. It describes the systems, structures and supporting arrangements in place to identify and respond to performance issues and drive continuous improvement. The aim is not to provide an extensive detail, but to explain as concisely as possible each component and how each component will integrate with other parts of the framework. Where possible, links will be to far more detailed information will also be provided within the performance management framework. If I can quickly canter through some of the key changes that have been developed over the last 12 months, you will begin to get an understanding of the scale of change that we've been looking at in developing this performance management framework. The county plan, as members will know, a new county plan for Torvine was agreed by Council in December 2022. The plan and its priorities will be the focal point for the Council during the next 5 years. Our service planning process, this is going under significant development, and a new process has been put in place for 23-24, which has recently been agreed by leadership team to assist the coordination of activities across the Council to deliver the Council's county plan, associated key strategies and other commitments. Legislative requirements. The performance management framework highlights how we will meet the new performance and governance requirements set out within the Local Government and Elections Act 2021, alongside the existing Wellbeing and Future Generations Act 2015. The Council's first self-assessment report was adopted by Council in October, and as you will recall, that was previously received by this committee for comment. The Council's strategic framework, this has been recently developed and agreed by leadership team as well. This sets out the importance of a set of key strategy documents and the associated delivery plans for delivering the Council's aspirations. The aim is to ensure development of plans and strategies will give full consideration to the Council's county plan, the goals and sustainable development principle defined by the Future Generations Act. This integrated approach to planning and strategy development will be central to the delivery of the Council's county plan. Another key part of the PMF is the development of a Portfolio Project Management Office. The Council recently introduced the Portfolio Project Management Office to help the Council deliver its ambitious strategic aims. The PMO will work with teams across the Council to support the planning, initiation and delivery of programmes, projects and service improvements, ensuring that we invest in the very best ideas and deliver them well to maximise outcomes for the people and communities of Torvine. Our approach to risk management. A new approach is being developed for defining and monitoring risk, which results in new scoring criteria dividing the risks into 3 tiers comprising of corporate, directorate and service risks, which allow leadership team to be cited on all the risks to the Council at an earlier point in time. This will allow earlier mitigation to hopefully prevent escalation. This will be reported into the Governance and Audit Committee in March 2023 and is part of your work programme. Approach to performance monitoring and statutory reporting. The document addresses the heightened expectations that will exist going forward around the way performance is reported, monitored, the way performance is reported, monitored and given throughout the year. Appraisal system. Recent work has also been undertaken to develop the Council's appraisal system for directors that will be further developed for the Council's heads of service. As you can see, there's been and will continue to be significant change in development of the constituent parts of the Council's PMF. Running throughout the development of the PMF, the key focus has been to clearly demonstrate the approach and direction we are taking in Torvine to performance and expectations across the organisation, to place a prominence on the service planning process as central to coordinating and driving our approach and the delivery of aspirations of the county plan and key strategies, and stress the importance of routine performance monitoring of measures, activities and risks taking place throughout the organisation. PMF has been through a process of development with input from corporate governance and risk working group, the leadership team twice, as well as challenge from Audit Wales, who are undertaking a piece of work on performance in Torvine. Many of the different parts of the PMF remain under development and will continue to change significantly over time. The PMF will therefore be kept under continuous review and updated as necessary. As part of its governance and assurance role, members are invited to note the progress made to date and to give views on the development of the Council's approach to performance management, documented through the Council's performance management framework. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions with regards? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I think this is very positive. I don't know if it's on the programme for members' seminars, a performance management framework, but I think it would be quite useful, given that we've had the presentation on the corporate plan, and I think it probably behoves a wider group of members than this committee to be aware of what's happening around the performance management framework. So I would make that observation. Second observation is that I think it's really positive to see the creation of a PMO type approach and a whole council consideration around projects and project management. I think that's a good way of sharing the expertise and skills. And the very, very tiny observation was, I think, point 4.5 is maybe a rogue sentence, because I don't think it links to anything. It says a small number of links are still to be finalised, and I'm thinking 4.5 doesn't seem to belong in the report, but I'm not sure.
It's not rogue, but probably could have been explained better. I was trying to say that within the appendix is as I said in my introduction, with this more detailed information, we will put links in, because we're trying to keep the document as concise as possible. Sorry. Let me start again. Not a rogue point, but one that probably could have been explained better. So within the appendix, if more detailed information exists, for instance, the full county plan, we will put a link into that document. So what I was trying to say clumsily within the report is not all of the links are currently live, but will be once the document is published. Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Kelleher, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, one of my questions you've just answered, Tom. Thank you very much. I'd like to say that the performance management framework here is commendable. It looks sufficiently complex, but it also suggests a number of challenges, I think, which you haven't really highlighted here at all. I think the complexities of measuring success, you talk about how the performance is going to be reported and monitored. Is there an agenda here, perhaps, that this committee could be subject to a report on the success of the framework? It's early days, it's not mature, I understand that fully. Yeah. Is there a plan to update us on the benefits and success that come from this framework? And secondly, I think a performance management framework that's subject itself to a performance management review is also very resource driven as well. I think, do you think you could manage that successfully within the organisation?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the onus is placed quite clearly onto service areas to ensure that there's a much greater emphasis given to performance monitoring, reporting, analysis. Where I speaking sort of brutally, honestly, it hasn't really been the case in the past. There hasn't been enough of a focus on performance. So that's what we're staying through at now. Our new service planning approach. That you come up, service areas come up with their service plans, but you know it needs to include everything that's important to the organisation, and you need to report on it on a quarterly basis. That's a kind of a minimum expectation, and that information then needs to flow through the council. So teams are looking at their performance. That's been reported into sort of heads of service to directors, and then ultimately the chief executive has put quarterly performance onto the leadership team agenda as well. So that's why I'm hopefully coming here today to give you assurance that performance will be, it started to be, but will be a much bigger monster, not monster, that's the wrong word, but a much bigger animal within the organisation as we go forward. And as far as your initial point is concerned, I think that my expectation is that I will be reporting back into this committee in the future. The exact focus of that report, I'm happy to be guided by you. I could bring updates on the document, but if you want something as far as assessing the impact that the documents had, then I'm happy to look at that as well.
I think Peter, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the opportunity to report back, it can be a specific item, or it can be included within the sort of every year we produce an annual governance statement, which gives the governance arrangement of the council, and we sort of, are they working effectively? I think this would become a key component of that governance framework. And when we bring the annual governance statement to you, I would have thought that there'd be an opportunity to give, at least a summary update of where we are, how effective it's working, and areas to improve as part of that. But if it needs to be a separate report, it can be a separate report. But I'd expect the majority of it to be covered under the annual governance statement process. Okay, thank you for that. Hal, answer your question.
I mean, just a sort of final point there is, a lot of what we've written into the document is kind of almost the future state. It will come into place sort of from the beginning of 23, 24. That's the right year, isn't it? Yeah, we're on 20. Yeah. So I've got no doubt that some things will work and some things won't, and it'll need refining as we go forward. So we will look at that. We're not saying it's what we put on paper now is perfect, but we will learn as we go forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom. I think my experience suggested this is a real challenging change programme, and it depends on very good, very strong communication channels, a cultural shift often in an organisation as well, and it is something that needs constant loving care, I think, to be successful. So we look forward to your future reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley, I think you've got a question.
I welcome this report. We've been through it in cross-cutting. We helped set up the county plan. We've got the county plan. Now what we've got is the mechanism. And what we're looking, we want to know the fit. Obviously, this committee, in a lot of respects, is the reporting mechanism. I must admit, it's new to me. I rather like the idea of Portfolio Project Management Office. What I need is I, as a member, need a constant review of what's happening. And it's always been a problem for us because we get our constituents want to know what's happening when they don't get their black box picked up, for instance. It's a constant on us as members. And we're told at scrutiny committee when we're being parochial, we not to talk about it, but we have to, because at the end of the day, they come back to us and say the bins aren't being emptied or the trees, whatever. And it's useful to know what's happening. Now, the way the county plan has been laid out, we got that snapshot at least every 3 months, and with this committee the same. So performance management, what's happening on the ground, what the problems are, for members of a council, we're duly elected to this job, is rather important. So to know what's happening and not come to scrutiny and say what the problems are, which is normally what we do, the optimistic side of it, and the governments, which is what members most of the time, we understand the finances and that because they're a very able team here to do it with us, and we've got the audit on it. This is how the governance side is probably stuff that members understand. Now, and I've got a structure here as a member which I can work with, and I think this obviously this committee can do that snapshot every 3 months. The same with scrutiny. We've got something we can go back to, which is ongoing. Horrible expression, but it is right. That's something I think Tom said it, we didn't particularly have in place. As a management structure, it looks like it's got potential. And it's only as much potential as the stuff coming up from the teams, social services, education, etc., etc. Now, I do understand this because I, at one time, used to run a recycling company. I'm not just somebody that's come into this. And you need that constant information. And we've got very, very big organisation. I'm sure Dave Liddy and the rest of you that run the side of it, the members need to know that stuff, even if they've got to say it to people. So, no, this looks hopeful.
Okay, thank you.
Can I comment on that, Tom? As a management tool and as something that we as members can work with and address scrutiny and going back to council meeting, it's not a report telling us what's happened, it's the bit that we need to know what is going to happen and will happen. Hopefully.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Councillor Ashley.
Could I have Tom's comment on that?
Thanks for saying you think it's hopeful. I'll take that as a compliment.
That's a very genuine comment.
No, at this point in time, it's our best iteration. But like I said earlier, we don't think it probably won't be perfect, and it will need refining going forward. And some things are still under development. But I think you're right. I hope you're right that it does set out a structure which we can work with, which you can work with.
I think as a scrutiny chair, I'm in the business of being positive, not negative. And that's the whole point of scrutiny. Critical friend. And I think this, that's the whole point of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on, Mr. Rees, you've got a question?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks again, Tom, for your for this report and comments. There's a theme to some of the things that I've been saying today, which is I'm welcoming these new positive initiatives that the council is taking on, but I'm questioning whether we are having to throw more resources at making it all work. specifically, the paragraph you mentioned there in the report about the development of a portfolio project management office. Is this something that you've had to take on extra staff to implement, or is this something that you've been able to develop, you know, within our existing resources? Diolch.
Can anybody answer that one?
Thank you, Mark. They're actually new posts that would be brought into the organisation with experience of project management, office skills, and previous usage of those, and they have been supplemented by it's all new posts. Sorry, it's new posts where internal individuals as well have gotten promotions into place. So it's a brand new team that's been set up for this sole purpose.
But I assume that although that's a cost, that if it makes us work better, then we should be able to, make some savings.
That's where we are, yes. That's the theory, yeah.
Okay, thank you all. I see nobody else has got a hand raised or wants a question. We're all happy. So with that in mind, we'll move on to the recommendation on page 193 of the agenda. Can you all state whether you're against the recommendations, wish to abstain? Otherwise, I will take them as agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, the internal audit. Mr. Peter Williams, can you present the report for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual quarterly update on where we are with the internal audit operational plan for the year 22-23. I just concentrate on the two key messages on page 211. The target for the plan for the year is, as you know, it's split into two, to achieve 65% of the overall plan, which is everything in the plan. And even within that plan, then, there's what we call the core plan, which are the main financial systems, and we look to achieve 100% of those. As at the 31st of March, the overall plan was 40%, and the core plan was 69%. The core plan will be delivered, we'll get the 100%. I think we will get to the overall plan of 65%. It just seems a tad low at the moment, where we are 3/4 of the way through the year. But when I look back at it historically, we do seem to deliver more product in the final quarter. I don't know if that's perhaps our tolerance levels get a bit shorter in terms of getting the reports out with our clients. There's no problems with the clients, but you know, when I say there's a low risk, I'm talking about perhaps we might not get to 65%, but we might be 61, 62, 63, you know what I mean? But I think the underlying message is there will be enough coverage of work across all the main systems, across all the areas of the council services, for me to provide an annual opinion on our systems and process for the year. So that's the first bullet point. The second bullet point is, obviously, we've done some work in the quarter, as shown in the appendix on page, I think it's 213, 214. The new areas we've done in the year are the ones where the coverage is shown as, let me get it right, white text on a black background. So those are the changes within the quarter. And from the work we've done and issued the reports as a draft or final, there are no significant issues I need to bring to the attention of the committee. We haven't identified any high priority issues, and I haven't got any concerns around implementation of recommendations as part of any of the follow-up audits we've completed in the period. Happy to take any questions on anything on the report, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Rees, you've got your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Sorry, Chair. I forgot to take it down from the last time. Apologies.
That's okay. You're forgiven. Has anybody got any questions or queries? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed you said in 4.3 that there's a significant carryover of jobs, so presumably that's contributed to the fact of, if I say, playing catch up a little. And I would imagine, and you indicated the approach was taken rather than delete jobs from the plan, so you know it's perhaps not altogether to be unexpected. So you know, but I was going to say then, is there the expectation that you'll catch up on yourselves, as it were, within this year to be able to perhaps not need to carry over so much next year?
Yeah, I think that what we did, there was a significant carryover, and then we adjusted the target rate, so by matching what we carried over and what we added to it and our resources available, the target achievement rate was 65%, whereas in previous years it's probably been around about 75%. We're in the process of looking at next year's audit plan, which will come to the next audit committee for 23-24. And I think at that point I might review some of the things that are in that plan, so we get the rate up a bit higher, but the coverage will still be adequate coverage across all the areas. But the carryover isn't a significant factor in potentially not achieving it, because it's matched the resources. But like it's probably being an internal auditor, we're a naturally pessimistic old bunch.
Indeed.
Thank you for that. Has anybody else got any questions with regard to this report?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick update. Obviously, this is our sort of skeleton plan of the areas we need to cover in the year. Mostly positive. I think most of the reports that should have come to date have. A couple of crosses on this year's, this quarter's report. One of them is mine in terms of the public sector internal audit standards. I think about before, every 5 years internal audit have to be sort of externally reviewed by a body. I've secured that body to look at this. It's an organisation called SWAP, Southwest Area Project, who did it previously 5 years ago. I haven't quite finalised the self-assessment that I need to do, hence that's why it's not on the agenda today. I'm hoping to finish that by the next committee, and then I'll bring that to the committee, outline where I think we are, and then the external accreditors will come in post-April 2023, and they'll hopefully validate that or come up with any recommendations for improvement. So that's one that's delayed, and the other one, I think there was the Wales Audit Office. I'm going to update this time on their quarterly performance, but I understand they will be bringing an update to the next committee. I don't know if they want to make any comment on that. Audit Wales.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody got any comments on this? Did Audit Wales want to comment on that?
Hi, Chair. Thank you. Yes, unfortunately, we weren't able to bring the reports to you for this committee due to timetables and when the papers are being issued. But I'm happy to give you a quick summary verbally if the committee would like. Yeah. So there'll be the annual audit summary report coming to you in the next committee. That'll be the report that sets out the key facts about the council, and then it will go on to describe the work that happened over the last year since the last report was issued. I believe it was maybe last January it came to you last. So it'll have a description of each of the work we've done, a summary of the national reports as well. In terms of the work programme, I think you've had an update earlier on the financial audit side, so you know where the accounts are at. In terms of the performance work, we're currently doing the ARA for 22-23. We're working on a waste review with the council, so that's all taking place. And so 2022-23 work programme is on track at the moment. So that's a quick summary, but in the actual report that will come to you next, it will have that set out, as well as an update from Eston and CIW, and it will have the list of the national reports and studies reports as well.
Thank you, Beth, for that update.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions or queries with regard to this report? Okay, we'll just take it for noted then. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12. The date of the next meeting will be the 29th of March 2023. Normal time, 10 o'clock, presumably. And the next agenda item is the exclusion of the press and public before we discuss the pink papers. So we agree that the exclusion of the press and public from the meeting as presentations and meeting papers are not for publication because in accordance with paragraph 14 of Part 4 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Access to Information Variation Order of Wales 2007, it contains information about a particular individual and information relating to the financial and business affairs of particular persons, including the Council, and in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest of maintaining the exemptions outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So please, members, will you agree to the exclusion of the press and public and check that all recording is stopped before continuing? We're all happy? You're all happy? Thank you.